put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates. I am Adanna Combie, and we continue conversations with our guest this morning. And we are speaking with Mr. Bradon Roberts, and he is the Tobago officer of TTUTA, Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association. And we're speaking this morning about safety plan that is needed for teachers in our schools. Good morning, Mr. Roberts. Good morning, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, and once again, it's always a pleasure to be on this set with you all.
Right. And of course, we're going straight into the conversations. We're talking about the importance of teachers to have a safety plan in place. And we're making reference to a situation that occurred a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, where a student had an outburst in a class where she was very, very vocal to a teacher, and the students, of course, recording her and sharing her on. The teacher, of course, feeling very unsafe in that environment. And we're speaking about having to put a safety plan in place for our teachers when situations of this nature occur. So we want to have that conversation this morning. We want to get your perspective on it. We want to get your recommendations in terms of what kind of safety plan can we put, and also what type of support we can put for teachers and for students, because I'm certain students who have this type of outbursts, they also need some measure of support as well. So let's have that conversation this morning.
All right. So, and I do not want us to just focus on the incident in Trinidad. We have our incidents in Tobago here too, right. And we would have had even at the primary school level at Hope, where there is this young man who seems to not have that ability to control his temper and his behavior while at school. And he, based on what I would have heard, he's suspended at this point in time while they try to sort things out. Now, we have been focusing on the wrong end of this topic. We are hoping to discipline persons or correct persons after they have become this particular element in society or within the school system. We need to ensure that our education system or curriculum is within a particular standard where our students can relate and they choose education. So even with the talk of the Tobago-centric thing, I'm really hoping now the children are screaming out now, They're actually screaming out. And what we are discussing now is how we're going to discipline them at the end, or investing in police vehicles and hiring more police officers. So the safety plan for teachers, I'm not certain that there would be any set thing that one could recommend just yet until we discuss these children's rights. Now, the children's rights that we have, and even the judge's rule from 2016, there are very little things you can do to our children, and in terms of correcting and disciplining them. We would have seen the incident with the security officer at Misnour Secondary School. The information that we got is that the student would have kicked the security officer and she fell. And in holding the student, there's a sound in the audio as if the student was slapped. And some persons are tarnishing the security officer, some persons are talking about the child's behavior. But what is there in place when there is this legal system that gives children all the rights? So we see where even the police officers can't just grab children anymore. You can't interrogate children without the consent of the parent and those kind of things. So we need to first address how we're going to keep our young persons innocent. And we also need to have systems in place. So should they have a suspension or expulsion, as we're seeing in this case in the Trinidad situation, what next happens to that child? So students know that very little thing will happen if they misbehave. They may get a 1 week or a 2 week vacation. So we need to address those things. In the secondary school, we have safety officers, but they are adults who have to also treat with these children rights that we have. Now, we know that in the past, some of our adults and our teachers may have been too forceful in the discipline side and even with the corporal punishment. But you don't just eradicate all those systems and make things almost free to our students, and then we try to run them down at the end. So in terms of this safety plan, we need to have, at least in the primary schools as well, safety officers. We don't have safety officers in primary school in the secondary schools. And even the powers of the safety officers is limited. We do not have where if there's an incident on the school compound, the security officers there to secure the compound. They are not there to be part in fights and assisting teachers if they have been attacked. So we need to ensure that there is some measure for teachers, even if they are to intervene in fights. You have to be careful as a teacher. We say to teachers, it should be a last resort, intervening in these fights. We cannot afford to see our students slug out at each other and cause great harm, so we would want to intervene at some point in time. But it should not be a first option running in, because what happens should a teacher get hit? No, they have to manage that emotion and not retaliate. Now, what happened is grabbing this particular child to prevent further damage. You yourself cause some damage to the child. You have reporting to do, everything will then turn on you. So we don't have things in place for our teachers and for any adult really in treating with these young children. And we have gone so far into these rights that we have neglected the responsibility and values and morals and so on. We have gone so far to remove the level of religious education in our government schools. So we have over time pulled down all the systems that we needed to ensure our students are conforming to the rules that we would want of them. So we need to go back to some of those systems, first of all, and mainly, if education does what it's supposed to do, we would not have all these challenges with discipline and crime in the wider society.
And you made a very salient point there. You're talking about moving away from morals and values, because I find that what we're speaking about is sort of a reactive kind of approach in terms of after something happens, then what do we do? But is there something in place, or shouldn't there be something in place to prevent this type of behavior from occurring in our schools? What is happening in our homes? What is happening? I know that there's student support services, but is it that the student support services come in after an incident? What measure of support is given to? Because I mean, a child will not just have an outburst just like that. There must be some type of situation going on that is the child is unable to control or manage, that causes them to behave in this way, and the teacher is now put in a very vulnerable position where, do I respond, do I react, what do? I have to consider my safety, and I also have to consider the child's rights, as you rightfully say. It's a thin line. It's like you're walking on thin ice here. What do we do? What do we put in place in our homes? What do we put in place in our schools before incidents like this occur? Because we cannot continue to wait until something happens and then nobody knows what to do. A safety officer, as you mentioned, is only there to secure the school compound, not the teachers, not the students, not anything that happens, not part in fights. The security guards even can't even get involved in part in fights and stuff like that. So what we need to have conversations about is, what do we do to prevent incidents like this from happening, rather than a cure for after it has already happened.
Well, I'm grateful for your submission, and you're right on target with it. Student support services, yes, it's in place in schools, but it's inadequate. We have these officers. It's not sufficient to deal with all the schools in Tobago. That's one. And even the resources allocated to these persons. Now, we should have, first of all, a curriculum that is known to all our stakeholders. So student support, our parents, the business sector. So at least if there are challenges with particular children, they will know how they can best assist. Now, we have our guidance officers and so on who are sharing schools. So they will be responsible for about 3-4 schools or 5 schools even. And they are juggling between these schools. So these children would not get the kind of support that they will need based on the resources allotted to them. Now, what we should have, though, we have a suspension center in Tobago. But as mentioned with the student support services, it's not adequately resourced. We should have a setup where we can have the police officers, the persons from the army, persons from the business sectors coming in every now and again to assist the guidance officers in the counseling of these students who may have their particular challenges. We have referral systems where our teachers would refer students who have particular challenges, and the effort or the action to come after takes so long, and with the resources we have, it's inadequate. So there are models that could be utilized, but I don't know if the economy is this bad that everything has to suffer. We need to ensure that if we put enough into education, We will not have to spend all this money in crime and security as we are doing now. So we need to see how we are adjust our allocations. We have systems in place, but they are being handicapped due to the resources afforded to them. So I feel it for those of our members in this in student support services, as they have a lot on their plate and the resources afforded to them is not enough. So in terms of this plan, we need to reform education to ensure our students are getting the best opportunity to relate and to have that performance. And we also need to beef up student support services and those other supporting elements. Even before we came to the interview, you all were showing the Children Authority. But how many persons will just take up a phone and call these persons and be receiving to the guidance and so on? So we need to have a system where if students are referred, a call is made from the school that there needs to be attention to this particular home, that persons really step up and hold the hands of the parents, the students, while we all work together towards making our children fitting citizens moving forward. So that is the kind of plan we need to have. It's not anything new, but they have been stymied due to funding and resource allocation.
Of course, conversations have to continue happening in regards to how do you assess a student, because I know in times past, not all students are interested or cut out for mainstream education. There are so many other things, so many other places that we could put our students so that they will not, sort of be kind of disruptive. Because as I said, there are a lot of things that are going on in the background, whether it's at home, whether it is that the child wants to do something else or be a part of something else, but they are in this confined sort of situation. And then they just have to, even as adults, we can't express ourselves when we are frustrated in the best possible way. And sometimes they also lash out. And I'm not focusing primarily on the children. I'm really speaking about them because they are the more, society would put them as the more vulnerable ones because they are children, and so they need to be protected. They have their rights, and as much as we as the teachers, the adults, the persons who are in charge of them, supposed to care for them when they are in our care, provide the necessary the education and all of that kind of thing. We also are vulnerable, so we need to do an assessment as to how do we place these children, how do we care for them, and how do we ensure that we too are safe, a safe environment for all. And these are the conversations we need to have. You're right in saying that education, we need to look at the education system and probably do some type of reform to ensure that people are placed in the right places, that the support is given to the teacher, to the student support services, beef up situations. I remember, even as you spoke about the community police going into the schools, I know we've had conversations with Sergeant Joseph here, right here on this show, where they go into the schools and they speak to the students and stuff like that. Maybe we need to increase that type of conversation. Maybe we need to increase the type of relationships that we have, the corporate relationships that we have as well. Corporate Tobago needs to go in, talk to our students, provide opportunities for them, let them understand that this is not the end of it, that there is a life after you leave this school or after you leave this institution. These are the kinds of conversations we need to be having so that we can reform the situation, so that we can curb these types of incidents from happening in our schools, protecting our children and protecting our teachers and our guardians, because we too need to feel that sense of safety.
Yes, and I'm listening to you, and I even like the passion in which you're bringing across the message. We need to have the conversation ongoing to it, because sometimes we set up things in place and believe that that's all. Like we have the MyLad program. There are so many programs, so it's not like if the THA or the central government is doing nothing. There are programs. But there is no mandate, so there's no obligation to have our children or young persons take part in it. So we need to be able to have that education, have the parents, the support systems where we can hold their hand a little better. And if we're going to have this community raising children as we had long ago, the community needs to understand what the school is doing. So yes, it's not just to reform, but it's to also educate the population as to what is the project and program of all our schools. We need to have the police service, the army, all the fire officers even understanding the programs of our schools so that they can indeed play that particular role. If student support services need that support in terms of resources and so on, make it public so at least persons could know how they can assist. So I've even been watching the budgetary allocations, which I see will cause us some problems, because it's grossly inadequate. We will need the support of the business sector. How does the private sector come in? without the knowledge of what the schools need. I don't know how that would how that would take place. But going to the point of even the expulsion now, we expel and we suspend. Then what? Now this young girl would now be open to the young men out there who are waiting on her. She may be able to be maybe a parent soon, and we're having young persons to raise. Where the support is. So we are championing that the child was expelled and the minister did a good job and so on. But what next? Our children in Tobago here who are leaving school with no subjects. We go through all these years of school and have no subject. We have the programs, yes, but if they don't take it up, what next? Do we leave them on the roadside to partake in the elements and so on that we have on the roadside? There are things that we need to do together as a community, and we need to have persons leading that conversation where it's not just education. We have all elements of our community coming together to discuss our future. It's an important conversation we're having here, and I hope that it doesn't end with this interview, but persons who are listening, we could come to the table and have these kind of conversations.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Mr. Bradon Roberts. He is the Tobago officer, Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, speaking about measures that need to be put in place in our schools, in our learning institutions, to ensure the safety of our students and our teachers, our educators as well, and ensuring that that relationship is a sound and solid relationship, right? The conversations need to be had, and we are looking forward to said conversations and resolution for better outcomes in our education system. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Mr. Bradon Roberts. Thank you so much for being here on the program with us this morning. We are going to go to a quick break as we continue conversations with our guests here in studio. But before we go, of course, we invite you right now to share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be back.